All right, continuous versus discrete is what we are going to be working on today. Our goal is to use appropriate tools to deepen understanding of mathematical concepts, and our essential question is what mathematical relationships did you identify in this situation? All right, a relation is a relationship between an independent variable, which we refer to as our x, because that's what we input, and a dependent variable, which is our y, that is our output. Okay, some other words that you hear for x values are the domain, which we learned about earlier this week. Input and independent y values are referred to as the range or the output or dependent. All right, discrete data is counted. Keyword is counted. The description of a task is usually preceded by the words number of. Function in a graph of a discrete function, only separate distinct points are plotted, and these points have meaning to the original problem. So you can think of like a scatter plot is typically considered discrete. Continuous continuous data usually requires a measuring device. So keyword is measuring. A ruler, a stopwatch, a thermometer, a speedometer, such as those types of things. Function in a graph of a continuous function, the points are connected with a continuous line, since every point has meaning to the original problem. So you think of obviously a line versus a scatter plot. Okay, so here's some examples. Discrete has obviously, like I mentioned earlier, a scatter plot versus continuous on the right. So we have different lines, and those are representing more than specific order pairs, something that you've used to measure. Okay, so discrete, the x values are certain points. They're typically integers and whole numbers. Continuous, those x values can be any point. They can be fractions, decimals, irrational values. So it's important to understand the difference. Okay, so here's some example of discrete scenarios and continuous scenarios. So read through those. So again, discrete, I can count. So it says number of, that's my key thing. And continuous, if you notice, weight, wind, water temperatures, electricity. So those are all things that are measured. So do you think a table is continuous or discrete? Well, do you measure the values in there, or are you able to count the values in there? So you should think, well, I could input -3 into a function and get an answer, which would be my output. Therefore, I have specific number values that I can have as an input and get as a result of an output. So that would be considered discrete. Oops. Okay. Why do we care? When graphing a function, especially one related to a real world situation, it's important to choose an appropriate domain or x values for the graph. For example, if a function represents the number of people left on an island at the end of each week on the Survivor game, an appropriate domain would be positive integers, because you can't have negative people, right? Hopefully, half of a person is not appropriate answer either for any of the weeks, so we wouldn't have like 1.5 people. The graph of the people remaining on the island would be a discrete graph, not a continuous graph. So it would look like a scatter plot. Mapping, so they are discrete, or it's considered discrete because you have specific ordered pairs. So my domain of x has an output, or my range, which is the y values. Okay, so let's try. I want you to put C for continuous or D for discrete. Go through each one. So I'm going to go ahead and check. You can check your answers, so you can pause it and then play it. Number of people in your class, I was able to count them, so that would be discrete. The height of a horse, I'd be able to measure that, so that'd be continuous. Time to complete a task. Again, I could measure it with a clock. The number of TV sets in a home, I could count them, it would be discrete. The temperature outside, so I measure it with a thermometer, so that'd be continuous. Number of puppies in a litter, I can count them. The speed on a car would be a speedometer, so that would be continuous. The number of questions on a math test, I can count them, discrete. Okay, so your homework assignment will be a Google form, which is in Google Classroom. When you're done with that, or you can watch the next video and do both assignments at the same time.